what's a classic? And ding ding, how come this MD is that much aware of what's a classic in literature? The interesting thing, Joseph Conrad has written some other very fine books. One of them that I guess I can't remember the real title now. But anyway, it turns out that Joseph Conrad was actually born in Russia, and he got out of there and he changed his name and became an Englishman. Most people think of him as an English writer.
Interesting.
Anyway, go on.
Why were you talking with what was the conversation? Did you have a conversation with the doctor about the?
No, just give me something for my feet.
When did you why were you picking up the book then?
Oh, because I'd ordered it from the library. I'd ordered a tape from the library.
Have you listened to it recently?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, fairly within the last 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, something like that. And that's why that's on the it's kind of up there on the list. But on the other hand, I realize the significance of this book is something that is universal. Now, whether it appeals to people is a totally different thing. Ruth started to read it, and she says, "I don't like this book."
That's our difference. The problem with favorite and what was the other word? Important. Yeah, and the thing that's influential, and that a book can strongly change you, and you could hate it.
That's right.
That's part of art.
That's
is that if it elicits a response, a good book. A fun book can elicit a nice response,
yeah,
an enjoyable response.
That's right. Yeah.
But not always. That blindness book is it's disturbing.
Which one?
The blindness book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's truly it's a disturbing book. It's.
Anyway, speaking of the reputation that the book has amongst others, somebody who was the president of the Congo or somebody says that's the most important book that the English have ever written pertaining to the slave trade. Not the slave trade, but
exploitation.
Exploitation, yeah, that's right. Well, I won't stop. I may not stop with 10. Let me see. Okay, Crossing to Safety.
Oh, that's a great book.
You know that book.
Yeah,
and it'd be hard. It's hard to put that thing together to summarize it because you've got these key actors in it who are relating to one another, and sometimes to not one another, relating to the university and all that. And anyway, I listed that, Crossing to Safety, and another book by the same author, Stegner, is the book called Angle of Repose.
That's my father's favorite title of a book.
Is
the
that
concept of the angle of repose.
Yeah,
is sort of
that's
beautiful.
where you rest.
Yeah,
that's right. You're not going to slide anymore.
Perfect stability.
It fits me because of the mountain climbing experience I have. I often think of those slopes that had accepted.
It's what you see. It's the physics of everything you see,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, that's a good book. I mean, it's one of my favorites.
Oh yes.
Now,
why don't we hold on for a minute while
Grandma talks on the phone instead of going in the bedroom and picking up the phone she should have picked up.
She'll be done in a second. The Tao of Poop. That's a great book. I love the picture of him sitting there with his little Taoist robes.
I love the message.
Yeah, this is a neat book. Yeah. It was interesting. My friend was talking to me about filming, and he talked about a real interesting, like he was discussing it in the way of, if you're going to film this interview, first you want to come and maybe film the house, film a shot. You need to have a lead in to where are we, in this room. And then he also suggested I film you sitting or tapping your fingers or thinking and get a good 10 minutes of just ambience, because when you put together the interview and start to edit it, you can't have a continuous. There'll be instances where you cut, but you can't cut and then start exactly, because it'll be weird. You'll sit and then you'll have you need a transition. So
Right.
you'll cut to you sitting and thinking or walking around your garden or something, and then maybe you'll just have your voice over.
Yeah.
And then we'll cut to back to you sitting talking about something. The editing, the weaving together of the sound and the visuals will be an interesting challenge. I'll have a lot to learn to do that. It's interesting to hear him talk about it though, because I could see what he was talking about.
You know, John, I was kind of anxious for you to come out because I need a tiny sketch, and maybe I don't when I finish. I tried typing a story
Mm-hmm.
that has never been put to print before, I don't think, and I've told it to very few people, so it won't be totally boring to them, to the kids. But my typewriter doesn't obey me always, or somehow I hit the wrong key or something. So this problem is that I've got normally spaced lines and type and everything with many corrections in it. Then it drops down here and it goes over so that the left-hand margin is about half of the page. That's fine. That looks like hell. I got a big blank space.
You need something to put it.
Yeah, so anyway, I turned to the next page. Wouldn't you know, the thing carries over to the next page. In the instruction book, as Ruth says, I'd have a lot of fun with the processor because I won't read the instructions. But here it goes the same way, so then I got a picture about this long, see? And then it goes back to normal width.
So I got tabbed over or something.
Yeah, so what I gotta do is draw an illustration in these little things to illustrate the story. Now, as you know, the problem with drawing an illustration requires positive control over your hand.
Now, is it a real story or is it a fictional story?
It's very real.
Maybe photographs? Photographs of you? Or?
No.
Well, I think you can.
It was done in World War II,
Just a moment.
but it's a very real story.
Oh, hold on.
Is 2 o'clock tomorrow okay to see Dr. Gary?
That's excellent.
Yes. Pardon? Well, no, Thursday, not Wednesday, but Thursday.
Thursday's fine.
Yes, it is.
I have to change all those dates I have. Wait till she gets off.
So where were we?
I was telling you about my need to draw the illustrations in to fill this thing. I thought was when John comes out, I'll have him draw it, because, you know, when I draw, boy, it's...
What do you want an illustration of?
Huh?
What do you want an illustration of?
Well, of the story. But in a way, maybe I should read you the story first. It has a lot of corrections.
Well, why don't we keep going on this?
All right.
Let's
Are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay, I've talked about the angle, and then, okay, the
Well,
next...
let's just, I just want to ask you about those briefly. What quality of that did you enjoy? What meant?
First of all, I love the writing, the style. It's like drinking a fine champagne or
It's so
cognac.
beautiful.
And that's the way Stegner writes.
That's a great description of it, because that's how I felt when I read it. It was so beautifully written, just easily written, and it filled your mind with so much imagery. And
Yeah, you hate to come to the end of the book because it's so beautifully written.
To me, that book was about the ordinariness of life. You know, that it was just so
the trials and tribulations and the problem of trying to overcome and then the eventual loss.
And he makes that profound.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the concept of anybody's story told honestly would be amazing. And he takes a very ordinary thing, and instead of being an extraordinary thing, he shows you the extraordinariness in an ordinary life.
You know, there's another aspect to it, but I can't tell you what it is that well, I guess maybe if I thought hard on it, I could. He's a Western writer, and the West comes through in his book. And being Westerner myself and associating with Western, I don't mean Western culture as opposed to Indic culture, but...
do you mean the West is in like a sort of the West Coast, or as in...
As in the West, the American West.
From Colorado.
Who are you calling?
She said from Colorado.
I said from Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
West.
Yeah, right.
But nothing in the Midwest.
Anyway, that's the angle of repose. Now, the Pooh is that little paperback. And that's one of these things that you bring down and you read once in a while because the illustrations are good. And somehow I associate myself with some of the characters, not the least of which is Eeyore. But this has a lot of days, a lot of times that kind of fits the day. And one thing I remember reading this somewhere in here, I forget who asked the question and who answers it, but the question is, what do you look forward to today? Well, I look forward to being over to Pooh's house and having some honey or something like that. And then, but he says, no, I think it's your anticipation of going over there. And he admits, yeah, that's what it is.
It's the idea, not the action.
Yeah, and that's so true of many things, you know, it's the anticipation.
It's the opposite, I think, is true of pain, is that our fear of pain is much worse than pain itself.
All you have to do is mention dentist and I start feeling pain. You know, I've done very little business at the dentist. But anyway,
okay.
So much for the Tao of Pooh. Yeah, because I also like the Tao of all the rest of the characters that have been written. Like Hoff, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hoff. And now a couple of books here that I listed on this. The book About This Life they're essays by Barry Lopez. Now, if you don't know who Barry Lopez is, then you'll miss half of it. But if you know who Barry Lopez is, you'll realize that he is a craftsman with words and feelings, and he intermingles these to a point where it becomes very difficult to really describe what this is all about. But it's about this life, and there are various short essays in it. And Barry Lopez has written some other things that the Arctic Wild or something like that. I don't know. He's written quite a bit, but he's essentially, I think, one of the outstanding writers that we have today in the world, and other people think that too. Field Notes is another one of these Barry Lopez things, and again, it's just a series of kind of short, nondescript events that sometimes don't end up the way I would have had them end up, but that's Lopez, and so he does that. A book that I have really thought I think is important, and that is The Song of the Dodo. Now, The Song of the Dodo is a book by Quammen, 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 David Quammen, who is a good writer, writes on a variety of things, appears often in magazines, including National Geographic, I noticed recently. But The Song of the Dodo obviously is about a bird that's extinct. So he never heard the song. But he covers a wide latitude of nature, evolution in nature, and some of the things he tells about are kind of startling to those of us who've grown up to think that Darwin was the sole inventor of the theory of behavioral success or whatever, because he finds another guy whose name escapes me at the moment, who corresponded with Darwin, and may have laid the groundwork for Darwin's theory of what is it? It's the whatever.
Oh, it's
Anyway.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, that's a general expression that's often used, but that kind of summarizes it in a way. But
what is it? It's
I can go get the book and find out either. But that's an important book to me because it reveals a lot of things that I didn't know, and from a side of the viewpoint is one that why do we rub these things out so quickly? It may deal with the treatment of the natives in Tasmania. It may deal with not the natives alone, but even the Tasmanian tiger, you know, which I can't even remember how to say the right name for it because